What comes to your mind when you hear the word dishonesty? Maybe you think of Satan, the father of the lie. Or Ananias and his wife comes to your mind. They lost their lives because of lying. We do not want to imitate such ones. We avoid lying. Is that, though, as far as our honesty goes? Our holy God Jehovah wants us to be holy as well, and that is why he urged the ancient Israelites not to deceive others, as mentioned in Leviticus 19, verse 11. Does this not add some color to honesty? Dishonesty includes, and please take note of this definition, intentionally leading someone to a wrong conclusion. For example, by twisting the truth or by providing only certain details, we endanger our peace with others.
We're watching governing body helper Gaius Glockentin, who is part of the publishing committee. He is taking us through the symposium item, Put Away Peace Wreckers, Dishonesty. Yes, this apparently is an organization that simply will not do with lying and dishonesty. And as an example of dishonesty, we heard there the example of Ananias.
Or Ananias and his wife comes to your mind. They lost their lives because of lying. We do not want to imitate such ones.
Actually, Gaius, I don't want to imitate the God who killed Ananias and Sapphira for lying. If you actually look up the verse in Acts chapter 5, verses 1 through 6, it's one of those verses where you read it as a Jehovah's Witness and you can't help but just scratch your head and think, what just happened there? So let's read it together. However, a man named Ananias, together with his wife Sapphira, sold some property, but he secretly held back some of the price with his wife's knowledge. And he brought just a part of it and deposited it at the feet of the apostles. But Peter said, Ananias, why has Satan emboldened you to lie to the Holy Spirit and secretly hold back some of the price of the field? As long as it remained with you, did it not remain yours? And after it was sold, was it not in your control? Why have you thought up such a deed as this in your heart? You have lied not to men, but to God. On hearing these words, Ananias collapsed and died, and great fear came over all those who heard about it. Then the younger men rose, wrapped him in cloths, carried him out, and buried him. So what we're led to believe happened here is that Ananias and Sapphira told the apostles that they would sell their property and give the proceeds to the apostles. But instead of giving all of the proceeds, which they weren't forced to give, I mean, this was a voluntary donation. Instead of giving all of the proceeds, they gave a percentage of the proceeds and left the apostles under the illusion that they were getting all of the proceeds, which arguably is shifty behavior. Yes, it's lying. Yes, it's dishonest. But which is worse, lying and dishonesty or murder? Because that's what happens to Ananias and Sapphira because of this. So apparently, if you tell a lie, if you're dishonest in any way, you are worthy of instant death. That's what happened. And this is supposed to be one of those verses in the Bible, or a verse in the Bible, from which we can derive profound moral insight and wisdom. I'm sorry, I'm just not seeing it. I'm seeing a truly messed up story. Anyway, let's get back to the topic at hand. Again, Gaius Glockentin wants to impress upon Jehovah's Witnesses the need to be honest.
Dishonesty includes, and please take note of this definition, intentionally leading someone to a wrong conclusion. For example, by twisting the truth or by providing only certain details, we endanger our peace with others.
Once more, I'd like to draw your attention to a video I made titled Lying for Jehovah. Thumbnail here if Tibor is gracious, and we know he always is, apart from that one time. So this is a video I made with actual video examples of Watchtower representatives, including governing body member Jeffrey Jackson, telling lies in defense of the Jehovah's Witness organization. And this is actually a strategy that is approved by the organization and indeed enshrined in its literature. It's a strategy referred to as theocratic warfare. And I have a little anecdote to share with you regarding my father. I don't really care about embarrassing him at this point because he's been shunning me for years anyway. My father, like me, went to the ministerial training school. When I went, it was called the Ministerial Training School in 2005. Some years later, because he was a widower, he got invited to the rebranded Bible School for Single Brothers, BSSB. And this was before it finally got named what it is now, the School for Kingdom Evangelizers. He got an invitation himself to attend this elite school for Jehovah's Witnesses. And I'll never forget having a phone conversation with him, because you have to bear in mind that before he started shunning me, we were talking quite a bit on Skype and keeping in touch with each other, even after the point where he knew that I had a problem with the organization and no longer considered it to be God's one and only true organization. So long as I wasn't disassociated or disfellowshipped, he felt comfortable speaking to me. And he went to the BSSB school, and I was actually quite intrigued about him going, to the point where I helped him put his notes together. So when you're a student, you take lots of notes, and I used my notes from 2005 to help him organize his notes in 2011. I actually had a bound book printed for him with all of the sections in it as like a gift. I guess at that point, even though I was awake to it not being true, I still kind of carried a bit of a candle for the principle of going to this school and being studious and taking in information. Anyway, we were in quite close contact at that point. And I remember one day having a conversation with him, and he was quite excited about something he'd learned in one of the lessons. And I'm not quoting verbatim, obviously, but he said something along the lines of, "Lloyd, you'll never guess what we learned today. We learned in the classroom that sometimes it's okay to lie. And it's actually in the insight book under lie." And I was on the phone thinking, okay, I don't quite remember that lesson. And also, how is this a good thing? How is this something that you're excited about? But okay, thanks for sharing. To this day, that conversation kind of disturbs me a little bit, because number one, how can you have an organization that literally calls itself the truth, giving people permission to lie? And number two, how is this something that you could actually be excited about to the point where that's something that you would share with your son? That's something that you would actually be proud of having permission to lie. Anyway, in case you think I'm making all of this up, let's look at the Insight book. The Insight on the Scriptures is a 2-volume encyclopedia written by Jehovah's Witnesses. It's their attempt at being scholarly when it comes to the Bible and putting all of the Bible-related subjects in alphabetical order. And under lie, it says the following: the opposite of truth. Lying generally involves saying something false to a person who is entitled to know the truth, and doing so with the intent to deceive or to injure him or another person. So right out of the gate, right in the first sentence, there's a caveat. It's only lying if the person is entitled to know the truth. And then further down in the article, you get a bit more information along these lines. While malicious lying is definitely condemned in the Bible, this does not mean that a person is under obligation to divulge truthful information to people who are not entitled to it. Jesus Christ counseled, "Do not give what is holy to dogs, neither throw your pearls before swine, that they may never trample them under their feet and turn around and rip you open." That is why Jesus on certain occasions refrained from giving full information or direct answers to certain questions, when doing so could have brought unnecessary harm. Evidently, the course of Abraham, Isaac, Rahab, and Elisha in misdirecting or in withholding full facts from non-worshippers of Jehovah must be viewed in the same light. Jehovah God allows an operation of error to go to persons who prefer falsehood, that they may get to believing the lie rather than the good news about Jesus Christ. So there it is in black and white. Jehovah's Witnesses, in certain situations, if they feel that someone isn't entitled to the truth, have permission to lie.
Let us now continue to watch the next segment of the dramatization. We left Emily and Celia sitting in a coffee shop. Please watch carefully and notice how Emily is tempted to alter the truth.
You pioneer together.
I know, and that's why I'm concerned.
Concern is good, but is there just a little bit of envy in there?
I thought you would understand.
I think I understand your feelings.
Not about Haley.
I haven't seen all her posts. There's nothing immoral, is there?
No.
Good. That's not like her. Now, if it's a case of her being more careful how she comes across, that's another matter. Why don't you talk to her?
Maybe.
Emily, you are a beautiful spiritual sister. You know, for years, I had a bad habit comparing myself to others. My own insecurity hurt me and my closest friends.
So you don't think I should have spoken to Celia?
Oh, I'm glad you've asked Celia about it. Someone you trust. What did she say?
Well, she definitely understands how I feel.
Good. And about Haley's posts?
Well, she hasn't seen everything she has out there. She did say that Haley needs to be more careful how she comes across.
What did she suggest?
That I should tell her that she needs to stop, but I'm too worked up.
Look. If Celia agrees that Haley's doing something she shouldn't, you should talk to her. You'll find the right time.
Thanks for understanding. I'm hungry. Can you say the prayer?
Sure. Jehovah, we would like to praise you for your generosity and kindness.
I'm sorry, I just can't get over how weird it is to see Robin, my former classmate at MTS, who's playing Jake. It feels so strange for us to be in this situation where he is in this piece of cult propaganda and it's my job to point out the flaws. I guess there aren't that many flaws in what we've just seen. If anything, this is again quite a rare example of a dramatization that is realistic. We have Jehovah's Witnesses gossiping about each other, getting their feathers all ruffled up because of something that someone's doing that they feel they shouldn't be doing, when in fact it's all very irrelevant. None of it's really important. We're talking about social media posts about jewelry. No one's been killed. No one's been robbed. There's absolutely nothing serious happening at all. And yet, not only do you have gossiping and people talking behind each other's backs, and as I've already pointed out, isn't it interesting that it's mostly women who are portrayed as doing this? We're going to see Jake, or Robin, do this a bit at the Kingdom Hall as this dramatization progresses. But mostly it's women, apparently, who behave in this way, or at least that's the message I'm picking up from this dramatization. It's, again, just a bit misogynistic in its portrayal of women. But what it absolutely gets right is that Jehovah's Witnesses are as prone to treating each other in an abominable way as members of any other religion. We have not just gossiping, we have lying. And there we have Emily being told by her friend Celia, now if it's a case of her being more careful, her being Haley, how she comes across, that's another matter. Why don't you talk to her? And these words are jumbled up and rearranged by Emily when she's talking to Jake. She did say that Haley needs to be more careful how she comes across, which obviously isn't what Celia said. And Jake then says, what did she suggest? Emily, that I should tell her that she needs to stop, but I'm too worked up. So a complete perversion of the actual advice that Emily was given. But I don't think there's anything strange or anything unusual or unrealistic about what's being shown here. I think this is typical, quite frankly, of the way Jehovah's Witnesses treat each other. They like to think they are an organization that's all about love, a love that never fails. But the hard reality, which I'm grateful is finally being captured in this dramatization, is that Jehovah's Witnesses are just as capable of being mean and horrible to each other as anyone else.